Chicago O'Hare International Airport, November 1975, 9:20 in the morning. The United Airlines check-in queue stretched 20 people deep, shuffling with the restless impatience of travelers who had somewhere to be. The air smelled of burnt coffee and jet fuel, carrying the specific tension of a space where hundreds of strangers were forced into unwanted proximity. Muhammad Ali stood third in line. 6 weeks had passed since Manila. 6 weeks since 14 rounds with Joe Frazier in 110-degree heat that had pushed both men to the edge of human endurance. Ali wore a black leather jacket over a gray turtleneck, dark slacks, sunglasses that partially concealed the fatigue still visible in his face. His brown suitcase contained training clothes, a worn pair of boxing gloves, and a handwritten letter to his mother that he'd been revising for 3 days. He looked like a man who had made peace with waiting. A few people in the queue had noticed him, murmurs passing down the line. "That's the champ." The whispers moved and dissolved without becoming anything larger. Ali did not acknowledge them. He simply waited his turn. Marcus the Bull. Bronson arrived at 9:22, 6'3", 275 pounds, former Northwestern football player, now running a private security contracting firm in Chicago. 28 years old, wearing a tight white tank top despite November's chill, because the size was always the point with men like Marcus. The size was everything. He had grown accustomed to the specific deference that very large men receive in public spaces, the small, unconscious adjustments other people make when serious mass moves in their direction. He had spent 6 years mistaking this deference for respect. It was not respect. It was physics. But Marcus had never learned the difference because the result looked identical from where he stood. His father, a steel foreman in Gary, Indiana, had taught him one lesson above all others. In this world, you're either the hammer or the nail. Be the hammer. Marcus had been building himself into a hammer ever since. He was late for his flight to Los Angeles. His associate, Jimmy Collins, walked half a step behind, both men moving through the terminal with the easy confidence of people who had never been seriously inconvenienced by a crowd because crowds had always adjusted to him. Marcus shouldered past people in the queue. The businessman with the briefcase stepped aside without protest. The elderly woman pulled her bag close and said nothing. He reached Ali and applied the same pressure. The dominant lateral push, the wordless assumption that smaller bodies yield to larger ones. Ali did not move. He shifted his weight slightly, absorbed the push as though it were wind, and continued facing forward. Marcus stopped, confusion flickering across his face. He had not encountered this before. Not from someone this size. "Big guy coming through, champ," Marcus said, the word champ delivered with just enough edge to strip it of respect. "Move it." Ali did not turn immediately. When he did, he removed his sunglasses slowly, folded them with deliberate care, and looked up at Marcus with the unhurried attention of someone who was not afraid of what he was turning to face. "The line is for everyone," Ali said, his voice calm and level, not loud, not aggressive, simply clear. "Wait your turn." Marcus blinked. He had expected compliance, apology, nervous laughter, the immediate yielding his size normally produced without requiring words. He looked at Ali's frame, ran the calculation his mind had been trained to run automatically. 190, maybe 200 with the jacket. Nothing impressive by his standards. "Buddy," Marcus said, his voice carrying patronizing patience, "I'm a lot bigger than you. Move or I'll move you." Ali's expression didn't change. His weight remained centered. "Try," he said. One word, not a threat, an invitation to discover something. The airline employee intervened with professional courtesy. "Gentlemen, please. Everyone will be served in order." Marcus stepped back, positioning himself directly behind Ali, waiting with the specific impatience of a man who had decided he would find another opportunity to establish the hierarchy this unreasonable person had disrupted. The opportunity came when Ali placed his suitcase on the scale. The suitcase wasn't fully latched. Ali had been reviewing the letter to his mother while waiting in line, making small corrections to sentences he'd rewritten half a dozen times. Marcus saw this. What happened next could technically be described as an accident, a large foot moving clumsily in a crowded space. But what actually happened was deliberate, Marcus drove his foot into the side of Ali's suitcase with enough force to knock it off the scale and send it skidding across the terminal floor. The clasp gave way. Contents spilled everywhere. Training shorts, a worn pair of boxing gloves with tape still on them, the handwritten letter, personal items spreading across the linoleum of Chicago O'Hare on a Saturday morning in November 1975 while 40 people watched. Marcus laughed out loud. The specific laugh of a man who had found a way to assert dominance while maintaining plausible deniability. Then he said it. He turned to Jimmy and said it at a volume calculated to reach Ali and everyone within 10 meters. Maybe the champ should stick to the ring, where people like him belong. The words hung in the air like smoke. People like him. The racism was barely coded, the contempt absolutely clear. Jimmy laughed nervously. Other people nearby looked away. The airline employee behind the counter went very still. Muhammad Ali did not react visibly. He knelt down on the terminal floor and began picking up his belongings with movements that were deliberate and unhurried. He folded the training shorts carefully, as though he were in his bedroom at home with nowhere to be. He picked up the boxing gloves, brushing invisible dust from the leather. He retrieved the letter to his mother, smoothing the creases with his thumb, his face giving nothing away. Marcus's laughter continued for a while, then began to thin at the edges as Ali's silence stretched longer than expected. Laughter requires a reaction to sustain itself. Ali was not providing one. Some people just don't understand the natural order, Marcus said to Jimmy, filling the silence. But the words had less conviction than before. Ali finished repacking his suitcase. He stood up slowly. He closed the clasp with a clean, decisive click that seemed louder than it should have been in the suddenly quiet space. Then he turned and faced Marcus with the complete, unhurried attention of someone who had finished everything he needed to finish and now had time for this. 40 people in the surrounding area who had been watching this unfold went completely quiet. The airline employee stopped typing. Even the ambient noise of the terminal seemed to pull back slightly, the way sound behaves in a large space when something is about to happen that demands attention. What happened in the next 5 seconds would become the most devastating psychological knockout Muhammad Ali ever delivered outside a boxing ring. First second, Ali looked directly into Marcus's eyes. Complete silence. The kind of silence that demands attention. Second, "What's your name, big man?" Ali's voice was soft, genuinely curious. No threat, just a question. Third second, Marcus, caught off guard. "Marcus, why does it matter?" Fourth second, Ali took one step closer. Not aggressive, but present, filling the space with something more than physical size. "Marcus, how old were you when your father told you that size was all that mattered?" Fifth second, Marcus froze. The question landed like a precision strike to the exact location where his armor was thinnest. Nobody had ever asked him that. Nobody had ever seen that. The 40 people watching held their breath. The terminal noise disappeared. All that existed was Ali and Marcus, and the question hanging between them like a live wire. Ali continued, his voice never rising, but every word finding its target with perfect accuracy. "I can see it in your eyes, Marcus. You're not pushing people around because you're strong. You're doing it because someone made you feel small when you were small. And now you're spending your whole life trying to feel big by making everyone else feel smaller." Marcus's jaw trembled. His eyes were filling with tears. The 275-pound body that had intimidated hundreds of people over 6 years was being dismantled by sentences. Ali reached out and placed his hand on Marcus's shoulder. Not a push, a touch. Human contact that carried more force than any punch. "Listen to me, son. 6 weeks ago, I fought Joe Frazier in Manila. 14 rounds, 110-degree heat. I thought I was going to die in that ring. You know what I learned?" He paused. Marcus couldn't speak. "Real strength isn't about how much weight you can push. It's about carrying your own pain without passing it to others. That body you built? It's armor, Marcus. But armor only protects you from the outside. The real fight is always on the inside. And that's the fight you've been running from your whole life." Marcus broke. 275 pounds of muscle and rage and suppressed childhood trauma broke down in the middle of Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Tears streamed down his face. His shoulders shook. The man who had spent 6 years making people afraid of him was standing in front of 40 strangers, crying like a child who had finally been given permission to stop pretending to be invincible. Ali didn't step back. He didn't judge. He just stood there, his hand still on Marcus's shoulder, giving the man space to collapse safely. "I'm sorry," Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible. "I'm so sorry." Ali smiled gently. "You don't owe me an apology, Marcus. You owe yourself the truth. And today, you found it." Then Ali did something that nobody in that terminal expected. He extended his hand. "Come on, Marcus. Let me help you up." Marcus looked at the hand, then at Ali's face, then back at the hand. It took him a long moment to understand what was being offered. Not forgiveness, not condemnation, just recognition. One human being seeing another human being beneath all the armor and pain and fear. Marcus took the hand. Ali pulled him upright, not physically but emotionally. The gesture meant something larger than the mechanics of it. The crowd in the terminal began to applaud. Spontaneous, genuine applause from 40 strangers who had just witnessed something they had never seen before. The airline employee was wiping her eyes. An elderly man was nodding slowly, his expression filled with something that looked like hope. 3 people approached Ali before his flight. A former boxer. "Mr. Ali, I've been in 50 fights. That was the hardest knockout I've ever seen, and you never threw a punch." A nurse from Cook County Hospital. "I see broken people every day. You just healed someone in 5 seconds." A Vietnam veteran. "I've seen courage in combat. What you did required more courage than anything I saw in the jungle." Marcus Bronson didn't take his flight that day. He sat in the terminal for 3 hours thinking about the father who had taught him that size equaled worth. About 6 years building a body designed to intimidate rather than connect. About the man who had seen through it all in 5 seconds. 10 years later, Marcus became a youth counselor specializing in anger management. He founded the Bronson Foundation in 1985, working with young people who had experienced violence and begun perpetuating it. When Muhammad Ali died in June 2016, Marcus spoke at the memorial service in Louisville. "That day at O'Hare, Muhammad Ali didn't knock me down. He lifted me up. He saw the broken kid inside the 275-pound body and gave that kid permission to heal. I spent my whole life after that moment trying to do for others what he did for me in 5 seconds. See them." He paused, looking at Ali's photograph. "People remember Ali for the fights he won in the ring. I remember him for the fight he won in my soul. He showed me that real strength isn't about making people afraid of you. It's about making people safe enough to become who they actually are." The story of what happened at Chicago O'Hare traveled quietly through the years, carried by 40 witnesses who never forgot. The bodybuilder who cried, the champion who chose compassion. The 5 seconds that prove true power isn't about domination. It's about transformation. 50 years later, the lesson still waits in airports and everywhere people confuse size with strength, volume with authority, fear with respect. Some teachers appear carrying suitcases, waiting patiently in line, dealing with whatever needs dealing with before departure. Quietly, completely. Then moving on. Have you ever had a moment when someone saw the real you beneath the armor? When compassion changed you more than criticism? Drop your story below. It might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.